Welcome back to FinTalk, brought to you by Vermec. I'm Jawad Akhtar, your host. Today we're going to talk about digital transformation, mainly in legacy systems with banks. So today I'm delighted to have technology expert Zahra Shah. Welcome, Zahra.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to share my knowledge and maybe also learn something in the course of our conversation.
I think I'll do more of the learning. Let's dive in. So there's quite a lot we want to cover. So how does digital transformation impact legacy banking systems, and what are the primary advantages that you see?
With a lot of the banks, because the banks were initially the early adopters of technology, so as a result, a lot of the banks have a lot of legacy systems which they constantly need to update. Some of these systems, they're not very good at communicating with each other. They're not compatible with each other. So when new regulations come up or new technology comes up, for instance, in the case of AI and generative AI, it's very hard for them to get value out of these systems because it is a difficult decision. You can't, start again and start from scratch. There's a lot of information stored in these legacy systems over many, many years, and in some cases, people don't know how that information has been transformed. So I would say the best way to get value using digital transformation is to use add-ons or like APIs, where you don't start from scratch or you build something new, but you derive value from the existing legacy systems. And actually, AI and generative AI allows you to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we'll touch upon AI, and I want to kind of go back to regulatory compliance. So some firms we see regulatory as a natural push. So without kind of forcing people's hands, that becomes the natural. Okay, we've now got to do this. Is that the drive that's needed to happen, or are there more aspects to this than just regulatory compliance?
To be honest, for a lot of companies, smaller companies, that is what really pushes them. You're absolutely right. I suppose that's human nature. A lot of people within the smaller companies, they think it's no point taking any action if they're not going to be impacted by it. But a forward-thinking company, an ethical company would always plan for this because it's a reputational risk. Why would you take that risk? So definitely regulatory compliance is the biggest driver because of potential loss of reputation, loss of business, fines, and with the larger banks, it's something that they have to make sure that they ensure compliance with, because some of them would not be able to operate if they were non-compliant.
And you touched upon AI and Gen AI. So we're talking about current trends in the market, AI, cloud technology, machine learning. What implications do these technologies have for companies embarking on a transformation program? Because there's so much out there now. Have I got to factor? Have I got to have ticked? Yes, I do Gen AI. Yes, I do that. Yes, I do machine learning. All these aspects now in this current landscape. How does that also impact the transformation journeys?
I would say that I know it's very difficult right now because I think a lot of companies are also suffering from FOMO. They see their competitors doing it and they think, oh my God, I must not be left behind. But I would always say go back to your basics in terms of your strategy, because every company is unique. So you have to look at what are your strengths and weaknesses as an organization. Look at your business strategy. What are the challenges you're facing? How can you address those challenges? And then when you look at particular use cases, when you're looking for a solution, then you, I would say, evaluate whether a potential solution would be in the form of an AI and generative AI application, or actually you come to the conclusion maybe you don't need it. But I would say only adopt AI or generative AI-based systems if they really solve a problem for you. Not, because you feel that there's a hype in the market, there's a trend. Because if your competitor or other companies are adopting it, their strengths will be different to your strengths, and their problems will be different to your strengths. So I would say in the long term, it's better to do what is best for your organization. And not just for employees within, but if you're looking at it from a sustainable longer term point of view, then you look at, your entire ecosystem that the bank operates in. What is in the best interest of my bank, my customers, suppliers, my partners, what will positively impact them in the long term, and then you will make a good decision.
I think that's the biggest issue. FOMO is a perfect word, by the way. It's, just because Bank A is doing this, I've got to do it. And we see that in trends across the world, where the need, the push to digital transformation happens from one person. It becomes a domino impact. But actually, you're right. This not necessarily works for that firm, does it? It works for that because that's the strategy. But it doesn't necessarily work for that. So from a board perspective, and I know you have a lot of board experience, how do you then kind of mitigate that, or just kind of not ride the wave, but to say, look, actually, yes, it's great, and we have to acknowledge it, but how much of that is, right, okay, acknowledged it, now let's move on, because it doesn't impact or doesn't fit to our business?
I would say that, again, you would start and look at your strategy at the board level. It is a good idea to look at start with one very low-risk use case, an internal use case. A good example would be, for instance, your internal HR policies. All of the banks have this, where all of these new, for example, regulations are coming in. You had GDPR, now the DORA regulation is coming in, and the various FCA regulations. And sometimes employees have no idea whether one policy complies with X regulation or Y regulation. And I guess a very low-risk way to introduce AI to them and within the bank would be to enable people to be able to have a conversation, through a internal chat, AI-based chat, where you can just search for policy. So whenever you, undertaking a task, you can just chat with your internal AI-based chatbot, where you can look for example, you can say whether XYZ is compliant with DORA, whether XYZ is compliant with, a specific regulation under FCA. That to me would be a very low risk, sort of a no-brainer way to adopt AI internally. And then once you see the results from doing that, an internal, basically a chat GPT for your organization. That's what what I was thinking of. And once you see the result from that, then you could think of, expanding the application. So that would be one way I would, as a board, look at it, and then look at start from responsible AI. So looking at a vendor that will actually ensure that my data, proprietary data, is safe, secure, and the information and the documents within the enterprise chat system is trustworthy. It's not going to leak. Employees are going to be using it responsibly, so they will need to be trained. And also, you can monitor, track, and audit what's happening. And again, for an example that I can provide is the IBM Watson X platform. They are a responsible AI platform for enterprises, and they have various assistant tools. For example, the Watson X assistant, which actually enables organizations to implement an enterprise chat just for their employees. So that's just an example.
Yeah, it's a good example. Now, we've talked about the theoretical approach and, kind of the fear of missing out and riding the wave and, staying on trend. But in practical terms, how can companies ensure a smooth transition? Because it's a big exercise to do a transformation program. How would someone make sure that it's never going to be smooth, let's be honest, but how can they kind of mitigate that to make it as smooth as possible?
That's a very good question. What I've seen with my experience, at Accenture and other organizations, is these kind of transformation programs, particularly if they're AI-based, there's a lot of fear in terms of people feeling that their roles might be replaced. And what I've noticed is that no matter you might implement the most advanced system, but if you haven't really culturally trained your employees If you haven't also incorporated a cultural change with the digital transformation, then it will not succeed. Because if people don't adopt it successfully, it will not be a success. So I would say you need to spend time and energy and actually have a strategy in terms of training people to use it correctly, but also reassure people that the tool is going to be there to help them become more productive, to help them in their jobs and not to replace them.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of this trend. I've done previous episodes on different topics. It always comes down to culture, the change in the culture. We're doing a transformation program, but actually you're transforming the systems. But people forget that they need to change the culture and the people and the organization to then drive that change. It effectively makes a smooth transition is when everyone is on the same boat, right? You're all going in the same direction. It always comes down to, and it's been pointed out in every episode we've done, is culture. It's a key word.
I think it's also how people communicate. Sometimes they're communicating literally where they think this is going to replace jobs.
Yeah.
And then instead of people being excited about it, they fear it. They think, oh my God, this system is going to mean I will no longer have a job. So they don't use it properly, and in certain cases they actually will want to sabotage the system because they feel that's the only way they can protect their jobs. So and I think a lot of people, sometimes it's a genuine mistake that they do that because they're so excited about this new system that they're not sensitive to the people who are meant to use it. So it's almost like you have to understand human nature. You have to, in order for the system to be successful, you have to persuade people that it is in their best interest to use the system.
Yeah, yeah. It's the benefit, isn't it? It's what's the end goal, and the journey to get to there. Yeah. So we talked about smooth transitions, pitfalls. There's always pitfalls in projects. What are common ones that you've seen in your experience?
The common ones I've seen is where people didn't actually do the initial feasibility study or analysis correctly, where they didn't look to really spend time to understand the problem and came up with lots of different solutions. And that I've seen that's a very common pitfall because if you don't really understand the problem correctly, and you're just adopting things for to meet a certain trend in the marketplace, then over the long term, it will not actually solve any business problem or objective, so it won't succeed. So spending the time doing the proper use case analysis, and also actually start with like a POC where you do a prototype. So instead of going full steam ahead and committing yourself to a certain solution, it's good to kind of test it out as a prototype, because sometimes what you visualize when you actually develop a prototype, it might be very different to what you visualize, and do it in a more iterative manner. There are lots of different sort of project management methodologies, but I think the most successful ones I've seen are sort of very agile, where they give you the opportunity to a little bit test and try it out. Which I would say is another big pitfall, because people who just jump into developing without really testing the prototype, that's also, I've seen a big cause for project failure. Not managing the cost, that's a very common one, not sticking to your budget. And then finally, the training side. So a lot of programs fail because people don't adopt them.
Yeah.
It's the cultural change aspect, which they kind of almost do it as an afterthought.
Yes, you've got the tool ready and no one's there to use it.
Or some people want to, they misuse it intentionally because they don't want it to succeed. So
yeah, comes down to culture, isn't it? And you're right. Sometimes it's not worth something shiny to and you spend millions on it, but incrementally, invest in that project, to show the growth or just show the goal, and I think, from a board perspective, you don't want to go spend millions on something that's not going to work. But if you can prove the fact that within small incremental steps that we do like a proof of concept is perfect, right? So look, this is the benefit. Now what's the next stage? And then the next stage, and then kind of work your way through.
And get the end users involved from the beginning, so they feel they have some, say in what's happening. And and where they have valuable feedback, take that feedback and incorporate it into the system, because then they will be more willing to use it.
Yeah.
If they feel that their voice has been heard and their issues are addressed.
Kind of just bring this back together. I know you vast amount of experience in consulting and in on board levels as well. What's your key insights that you would share with our audience from your experience?
I would say the main thing to look at before you embark on any kind of project is to look at your strategy. You'd be surprised how many people don't do that. And really look at, I know it can be a little bit cumbersome, but look at from the point of view of, at the board level, you have to, whether this is really in the long-term interest of the organization. And it's very hard, as you said, when there's big hype in the marketplace, there's external pressure, maybe your shareholders are putting pressure on you. And sometimes being a good leader means you have to resist that pressure if it's not in the best interest of the company. That's the whole point of leadership, that you don't get drawn into whatever new shiny thing comes up, which if it's not in the best interest of your bank. So I would always say to the board, to the leadership, to always look at what is in the best interest of your organization. Then look at, in terms of your strategic objectives, what are the main priorities for your organization? 3 main, and then look to see how you can utilize digital transformation, especially AI-based digital transformation, to solve that problem for you. And start with a proof of concept, prototype, test it out. Maybe you come to the conclusion that it's not for you, but at least you would have had some experience, and you'd have evidence. So it should be evidence-based, definitely. And when you are undertaking a transformation program, definitely get your people involved, communicate throughout, and ensure there's a cultural sensitivity in the whole program right from the beginning.
Yeah, you get investment not just from a cash injection, but actually people investment as well.
Exactly. Only then it will succeed. And especially if it's done in a responsible and ethical manner. I feel that if you try to cut corners, then you will not succeed in the long term.
Yeah, there's a huge onus, especially around the board level, around responsibility, and kind of looking at it from an ethical point of view as well. How green is it really? And we have to factor that in as well. Zahra, that's been excellent. I know we're going to cover this in more depth at the Future Fit conference that you'll be partaking in. So again, thank you so much for your time. It's been very valuable.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very excited for the conference, and I look forward to learning from some experts.
Excellent. Thank you.